Welcome back, everyone, to Franciscan Fridays podcast. I'm Father Luke Mary Fletcher.
And I'm Brother Pius Gagne.
And here we are again.
Back at it.
A couple of things as we start. Evidently, people tend to watch the beginning of videos and maybe not necessarily all the way through. So right here at the beginning, we want to say subscribe. What do you say? Thumbs up.
Like, subscribe.
And if people leave comments, I think somehow it helps the algorithm.
Yeah.
So let's get that right up front.
Tell your friends.
Brother Pius, obviously we had fun with John Paul. Of course, he's right here behind the cameras as usual. But today is going to be a little eclectic, a little strange, a little fun, a little out there.
That's what we like.
I want to talk about the Pope. I want to talk about hope for this great Jubilee year, Pilgrims of Hope. We want to talk about AI. We need to talk about that Knicks Pacers game last night. And I want to talk about the musical Annie and the movie Wizard of Oz. And we'll see where it goes from there.
Stick it all in a blender and see what happens.
So just to begin, and we kind of feel like this mission, we need to get the word out. There are these fake YouTube and probably, I don't know, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok accounts purporting to be Pope Leo, like sermons of Pope Leo.
Yeah.
And it's completely and totally fake. It's not real at all.
Yep.
It's AI, and it's all these people are leaving comments. Oh, I love Pope Leo. This was so wonderful. And it's not even really him. It's fake news like Time 2.0, and because of AI, it's just getting harder and harder to tell. I know the last couple of episodes we mentioned that Pope Leo has already mentioned the threat of AI and the danger of not knowing what's real. So we just kind of want to get the word out. And it's a little discouraged. I'll be honest, it's a little discouraging. You see this stuff that's completely fake, and it's getting over 100,000 views or whatever, and then other podcasts are just getting 100 views or what,
Yeah.
But welcome to the modern world, huh?
Exactly.
And with Pope Leo, so he's already been giving a number of talks and everything. We're going to talk about a teaching he just gave the other day on hope, which was really excellent and good and interesting. But that he did graduate from Villanova University. Okay?
That's true.
And so 3 of the present players on the New York Knicks are former Villanova guys.
True.
So they're calling it the Nova Knicks, And of course, growing up in Indiana, being a Pacers fan, we remember the great rivalry between the Indiana Pacers and the Knicks with Reggie Miller and Spike Lee there on the sidelines. And of course, last night, the Knicks were winning game 1. I don't know. They were up 20-some points with 2 minutes left or whatever. We just kind of went to bed. Okay, oh well. And then in the morning, you find out that your beloved Pacers actually won the game. And our player, Halliburton, who's been voted the most overrated player in the NBA, which is such an insult, hits this crazy shot to put it into overtime and et cetera, et cetera. Anyways, people were talking about it at the parish this morning. So it just really put me in a great mood,
That's fantastic.
There's always hope, right?
That's
There's
right.
always hope. Even
Exactly.
Reggie Miller did that to the Knicks back in the day as well. Your team is down. It looks like you're going to lose. People are heading for the exit. And yet, don't give up hope. There's always hope.
That's right. And it feels a little bit vindicating because my Celtics were beaten by the Knicks. And so, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. I don't know.
I'll take it. We're usually at odds with each other in sports.
It's true.
And I don't know if Pope Leo is following the Knicks now, if his beloved
That's
Villanova.
true.
I don't know. So we'll see. But the theme of hope is really a great message, and it's so important. And just the other day, we had our great Fatima day here at the shrine. There were thousands of people, even though it was a rainy Tuesday, and it was so encouraging to see the faith and the fervor of all these beautiful people that were here. And of course, to open up our season, we had our Episcopal advisor to the Blue Army. That's Bishop Joseph Perry, a retired auxiliary bishop of Chicago. And he gave a homily, which was a masterclass on the virtue of hope. And not really entertaining, not really flashy, but this really just beautifully said. And that's also available on the Shrine YouTube and Facebook. People can see that. And it just kind of restarted for me that topic of the Jubilee year, Pilgrims of Hope, and Pope Francis had been giving some catechesis on hope, which now Pope Leo is picking up. And Pope Leo gave some of the teaching on his Wednesday audience in English.
Oh, that's
which,
cool.
Felt good,
Yeah,
as a native English speaker. And you can imagine in Rome, probably the language that most people speak from all around the world at this point is probably English.
Sure.
It reminded me of a funny story of friends of mine who were studying for their doctorate in one of those schools in Rome. And the professor was a native English speaker, and all the students were native English speakers. And the professor was giving the lecture in Italian, which was, he was struggling, and then those listening were struggling anyways. But the Lord obviously speaks every language.
Yes.
But Pope Leo gives this beautiful teaching on hope, and he centered it on this painting by Van Gogh called Sower at Sunset.
Okay.
And so you see this painting, there's the sower, and he's throwing seed everywhere. It's, a display of the gospel parable. And a couple of details which the Pope highlighted, which were amazing, is just the central kind of location of the sun really kind of becomes the main figure of the painting, just a reminder of God, for what needs to happen for seeds to grow. You need that water, you need that sun, and the sun is right there in the middle. And then oddly, the sower, who's kind of just throwing the seeds everywhere, as the Pope said, kind of a symbol of God's reckless love for us. Just this seed is going everywhere. As Jesus says in the parable, some of it lands here, some of it lands there, all different types of soil. But in this painting, Van Gogh already has the wheat field in full harvest, and the Pope kind of pointed that out as a curious detail, as a sign of hope. Usually when the seed is being thrown, it's just bare land, and then much longer time before you see the full plant. But in the painting, the full plant is already there. Yeah. This beautiful, lush field. It's kind of a symbol of hope.
Yeah. It feels like, Father, as we sort of began talking about AI and kind of the new world that is sort of opening up because of the use of AI and this technological advances. And it kind of reminds me, there was a summer that I spent with some hermits in New Jersey. And part of what we had to do, one of the things I had to do there was help to plant grass. We cleared out an area and we planted grass. And it reminded me of just how disconnected we can become in our world from the natural process and sort of the natural hope that happens, right? You throw the seeds down, you do your best, with grass seed, you have to water it multiple times a day. And it's not a guarantee that it's going to grow. You're kind of watering it in hope that it will grow. And it's a much more, well, for lack of a better term, organic process where you're patiently waiting for the fruit of your efforts to manifest itself. And I think, so often in our time, there's instantaneous gratification. There's instantaneous results, right? You type something into Chat GPT and it'll tell you everything you want to know and probably make some stuff up that isn't actually true about whatever you're asking about, But the reality is, in life, it requires so much more patience and exercise of even the natural virtue of hope, right? The natural virtue of hope is, hoping for something to happen, whereas supernatural hope, the theological virtue, refers specifically to God and to believing that God's promises will be fulfilled in our lives. And I think that it's helpful and useful to kind of look back at and to sort of be in touch with what it is to wait for things to grow, what it is to hope and to cultivate and to work at waiting. I think that we've grown unaccustomed to waiting for things to come to fruition in our time and in our culture. And I think something like that painting reminds us that often what God is doing, the work God is doing, it takes time. And God plays the long game, right? We're hoping for an instantaneous result, or, as friars, we'll go and give a parish mission and you hope everybody has an amazing experience and comes to Jesus, But very often you'll find out oh, somebody said something to me 5 years ago, and I'm just getting it now, you know? And I think that that's a helpful thing to remember as we're in this Jubilee of Hope, that sometimes the best thing we can do is wait and trust, even though we're not seeing kind of the immediate fruit of our labor.
Great insight, bro.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of living here at the shrine. Sometimes, I like to tease and say it's a shrine of Our Lady of Fatima / grass farm.
Yes.
It's like almost like a golf course. We're always mowing the lawn here. And then, but of course, also all these beautiful volunteers who what we call Adopt a Spot, where they've claimed an area of the shrine and they're here volunteering and planting. And I didn't, realize so many varieties of these flowers and plants and the care and how some of them bloom in spring and some in the summer and some in the fall. Like I've been learning about that. So many of our volunteers have been teaching me, and just that it takes like time and effort and care. And like when you walk around, like for example, our rosary garden here and you're praying, of course, obviously the rosary got the name rosary. It's a metaphor for a spiritual bouquet to Mother Mary. You start to grow in your appreciation for the hard work that went into making things look so beautiful. Yeah. And of course, that is also true for our souls, like the soil of our souls, right? The seed of God's word. And as I was thinking and praying about for the podcast here today, I was just asking the Lord, like, for memories from my childhood, for a couple of things that I could say that feeling a sense of hope. And so I want to talk about these two memories that I had. Now, how I got there is kind of an odd thing. So I know a lot of families watch America's Got Talent.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And so whenever I'd visit my family in the summer, we would watch it. So there's a bunch of these countries that have, so-and-so got talent. So evidently last year in Britain's Got Talent, there was this girl named, was it Sydney Christmas? Oh. So she comes to, the microphone, and she's, seems like a simple, kind person. And she sang that song from the musical Annie, Tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so evidently the head judge, is it Simon something?
Simon Cowell, maybe?
Something. Yeah, he's like, oh, I don't like that song or whatever. So it was really risky. And she sang the most beautiful kind of R&B rendition of that song. And she got the golden buzzer.
Wow.
And then, I did a little research to find out. Then she goes on to sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow from The Wizard of Oz as the final song, and she won it last year.
Wow.
And that reminded me of those two songs in my childhood and how encouraging they were to me. And so I thought I just wanted to highlight that as something kind of different. Now, obviously, maybe they're not necessarily religious originally.
Sure.
But I remember that 1982 movie, Annie, and that little girl,
sure.
With the beautiful red hair, and she's little orphan Annie, and she's singing. And so just to quote the lyrics to that song, the sun will come out tomorrow. Bet your bottom dollar that tomorrow there'll be sun. Just thinking about tomorrow clears away the cobwebs and the sorrow till there's none. When I'm stuck with a day that's gray and lonely, I just stick out my chin and grin and say, oh, the sun will come out tomorrow. And it's a beautiful melody. I was going to sing it, but I thought that might be a little embarrassing. But obviously, the sun coming out tomorrow reminded me of the miracle of the sun at Fatima. And there's little girl, Lucia Jacinta, and then the little boy, Francisco, and that great miracle that in October of 1917 that kind of confirmed that Our Lady was indeed appearing to these children. And as we've often said, the message of Fatima, the event of the Fatima apparitions really are hope-filled.
Absolutely.
That God cares for us and that Mother Mary prays, and even in the dark gray, and normally I love gray, obviously being a gray friar in St. Francis, and I love the gray, rainy weather, but it makes me weird, I know. But we also love the sun, we need the sun. But there's something about the melody of that song and that little girl singing it. It's, obviously it's become like a pop icon of optimism, which is not exactly the virtue of hope, but it's kind of on the natural level, that idea, if you're having a bad day, just, tomorrow's a new day.
Yeah.
Maybe there'll be sun tomorrow and the gray will be cleared away. Obviously, the early church saw the rising sun as a natural symbol of the risen Jesus, who, and this works well in English, sun, like S-U-N, like the star that we're going around in.
Yeah.
Son, S-O-N, the Son of God. And then, so anyways, I highlight that song and just the memory of that musical, and, hearing that little girl sing it. And then finally, that girl on Britain's Got Talent did sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, which again is another song from The Wizard of Oz. Like, obviously, our shrine manager here is Dorothy.
Yeah.
So we're often joking about turning the shrine here into the Emerald City.
That's right.
Instead of angels, there'll be flying monkeys. Right? I don't know. Welcome to my brain. But just this memory, again, it was Judy Garland. It was saying such a beautiful song.
Yeah.
And of course, there was that Hawaiian man, Israel something, who sang like a ukulele version. And he took What a Wonderful World and mixed it together with it.
Yeah.
But so just the lyric of Somewhere Over the Rainbow, somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops away above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me, somewhere over the rainbow. Blue birds fly over the rainbow. Why then, oh, why can't I? And again, I don't know that the intention was religious, but you think of the rainbow in the Bible is that sign of God's covenant. Above and beyond the rainbow is God. Yeah. So it feels to me like this could be making reference, at least for me, of God, up in the sky, this place where all the troubles melt away. That is heaven.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the idea of wishing it upon a star is also reminds me of the Star of Bethlehem. When Jesus finally comes, he is our source of hope. He is hope incarnate, especially through his death and resurrection. Yeah. So what are your thoughts? I know this is a little eclectic and random and just kind of pulling together some thoughtful kind of ideas for this topic.
Yeah, it reminds me, where she talks about the troubles melting away. It reminds me of what we've heard in Mass recently about how the Lord says in the book of Revelation that he'll wipe away every tear from our eyes. Like somehow, and in the Psalms, David says that the Lord keeps a record of our tears. And I think that in this life, we're not necessarily promised, the sun will come out tomorrow, some days. Yeah. Here, it's been rather cloudy, and so it feels like it won't ever come out again. But
hold on to hope.
Exactly. But, in this life, we don't necessarily see the resolution of our troubles. Right. People suffer things that don't really resolve in this life, which is why hope is such an important virtue. It really anchors us, and that's what the author to the letter of the Hebrews talks about. Like, our hope is like an anchor thrown through the veil of heaven that we can hang on to because it's anchored to Jesus. And I think, I was looking back at the letter that Pope Francis wrote to start the Jubilee of Hope. And the first line is, "Hope does not disappoint." And the fuller quote of that is, "Because the love of God has been poured out into our hearts." And it feels to me like the reason why our hope in the Lord is so trustworthy is because we know that he loves us. Like, the thing that guarantees our hope is, yes, God is truthful, God is trustworthy, but I think even more importantly, and St. Paul highlights this so beautifully, like, who can separate us from the love of God that comes to us in Christ Jesus? His love is the anchor, right? It's more sure than the ground that we stand upon, right? Like, the priority is actually in God himself. God is more sure. And so even if it feels like the sun won't come out tomorrow and, that place over the rainbow isn't in this life, we can trust that the Lord uses everything, works all for good for those who love him, and more importantly, those who are loved by him. And I think that the more we anchor ourselves in that truth of how beloved we are, the more we can stand firmly in hope, right? It's not just a well wish, like
Right.
hope can so often be used flippantly. Like, well, I hope that I win the lottery. I hope that, when we were kids, I hope that there's chicken nuggets for lunch. Like, those things are nice, but the weight of the truth of hope is something so much more beautiful. It's there's a beautiful poem. I think it's by Paul Claudel, and he wrote this book, and he talks about hope being like a little child that leads faith and charity by the hand. And I think that sort of youthfulness, right? That sort of ever fresh, ever newness of hope, it's just so beautiful. And I love that image because it reminds me of, my nieces and nephews who will grab my hand and show me what they want to show me.
Right.
And there's such, you think of children, a child whose dreams haven't been, sort of thwarted, or, the jadedness that can happen as you get older,
Exactly.
Children are kind of like always expecting the best. And I think that there's a way in which the Lord invites us into that childlike hope, where we can expect the good things, the ever new things that the Lord is offering to us. And we can really say that, the sun ultimately will cease to shine. But in the book of Revelation, it tells us that the city doesn't need light from lamps of the sun because the Lord himself is the light. And I think that is just such a beautiful, it used to terrify me. I remember my science teacher, it was like 8th grade, and they were talking about like in however many billion years the sun would like burn out or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm like, why are you telling me this? It's terrifying to think that the sun is going to like eat the earth up or something, like.
It makes for a great movie, though.
It does. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Or asteroid that's going to hit the earth, like that movie Armageddon, like despite all of those crazy science fiction things, we have a light and we have a hope that is firm and unchanging. And that to me is so encouraging.
Wow. Thanks, bro. And I think you had shared that detail with me with Paul Claudel, and that the virtue of hope is symbolized by like a child holding the others by the hand. Yeah. And I think that also reminded me of the children of Fatima and little Annie in that musical.
Yeah.
But you also just now made several references to the symbol of hope, which is the anchor. And certainly, I was going to talk about that, but you just reminded me, maybe we'll conclude it with this idea. Sometimes in medieval times, they would design churches to look like an upside down boat. Like if you look up at the ceiling, and it's like the church is this boat, this bark of Peter, this new ark where there's safety, and we're traveling through the world. It's almost like something out of Pirates of the Caribbean, right? It's now like upside down.
Yeah.
And of course, we know an anchor, when you're in a boat and you throw the anchor in, that helps keep the boat like where it is. And like if the church is an upside down boat going through this world, the anchor goes up into heaven where God is, where Jesus is. And I had this image of the rosary. And of course, the cross of the rosary kind of would resemble like an anchor.
Yeah.
And that we're holding on to the rosary, and this anchor is up, firmly keeping us rooted in Jesus and in heaven. It's another prayer image to kind of help us, this kind of metaphor that whatever we might be going through here on this earth, we know that it will end. That what's waiting for us on the other side, is that one of our priests from Maine has this funny thing. You ask people in Maine, have you lived here your whole life? And they're like, not yet. Or anything we suffer here, it's not permanent. It doesn't go on forever, because we know that eventually heaven will be ours. Through Jesus, we pray. So very encouraging topic today, bro. Thank you.
Yeah,
Great to have you back here.
Good to be back.
Yeah. And again, we thank everyone for listening. And if you want to interact with the content here through comments or liking, subscribing, or to even donate to Our Lady's Shrine, everything here is run on donations. So we're grateful for your help here. Thank you.